My name is Emma Powell. I am 30 years old. 4 years ago, my older sister secretly piled enormous debts onto the catering business we had built together while I did all the unpaid work, and she took the credit. Right now at the mediation table in our Austin attorney's office, she is demanding I sign over every last asset. Her lawyer leans in and whispers the liability details, and her face goes completely white. I smile inside for the first time in years. I am ready to let her claim it all and set my boundaries forever, even if it leaves me alone. If you have ever watched a family member demand everything while hiding the real cost, drop a comment below with your own story and hit subscribe so you do not miss how this all unfolded for me. Let me take you back because you need to understand how we reached this moment in that stuffy conference room with the blinds half drawn and the smell of fresh coffee turning stale. My name is Emma Powell, and for 8 years I poured myself into supporting my older sister while raising my son Mason and trying to keep some shred of my own life intact. I met my ex-husband Stephen Evans right after high school when I was 18. He was 25 and charming in that easygoing way that made you believe the future would just sort itself out. We got married at 19, and Mason came along when I was 20. I worked part-time at a small accounting firm here in Austin as a junior bookkeeper while handling the house and the baby. My parents always said a woman should keep her own money tucked away, and I listened. My older sister started a catering and event planning business when she was 26, and it took off fast because she had the personality for it. Clients loved her. She had this way of making every party feel like the event of the year. She asked me to quit my part-time job at 23 and help her full-time with the books, the client contracts, the vendor payments, the scheduling. She needed someone she could trust completely, she said. So I became her unpaid everything. Bookkeeper, office manager, supplier, negotiator, menu tester, delivery coordinator. I did it all while raising Mason, managing our household, and somehow keeping my ex-husband happy enough that our marriage did not collapse under the weight. My official title was Little Sister. My unofficial title was the Glue. For 8 years, I built that business right alongside her. I stayed late reconciling spreadsheets while she posed for the local magazine features. I negotiated better rates with vendors while she collected the awards at Chamber of Commerce dinners. At every single event, she thanked her team, her mentors, her vision, but somehow never quite got around to thanking me. Somewhere along the way, the dynamic shifted. She started making big decisions without looping me in. She stayed out later for client dinners more and more often. She began criticizing little things, the way I dressed the meals I prepped for the team, my lack of ambition. I was running her entire back office for free while raising her nephew and keeping her life organized. But sure, I was the one who needed to step up. Then 4 years ago, she dropped the bomb on a random Tuesday evening. I was at her house in South Austin, finalizing the books for a big corporate event. She sat me down at her kitchen island with this look on her face, not sad, not apologetic, just businesslike. I want to restructure the business, she said. I want full ownership, the clients, the equipment, the house we co-own, everything. You can keep Mason, she said it like she was ordering lunch. I will take the assets, hold the kid, thanks. She said it like our 14-year-old son was an inconvenience being graciously allowed to stay with me. I just stared at her. 8 years of building her dream, and this was how it ended at her kitchen island, between the marble counter and the fancy espresso machine, like I was just another item she was discarding. What I did not know in that moment, what I would not find out until later, was that my older sister had been planning this for months. She already had her lawyer, Stephanie Harris, expensive and sharp. She had been building her exit strategy while I was meal prepping for her events and scheduling her vendor meetings. I had been blindsided by my own sister, the one I had trusted with everything. The next day, my mother showed up at my apartment. She had treated me like the backup helper for years, and she arrived with her perfectly styled hair and her perfectly practiced sympathy face. She patted my hand and told me I should have tried harder to keep my older sister happy. Sisters have bonds, dear, she said, like she was explaining something complicated to a slow child. My father just stood in the background nodding along like he always did when my mother spoke. That first week was a blur. My older sister moved me out of the shared office space at the catering kitchen. She had documents drawn up, settlements, proposed timelines established. Everything was moving so fast, and I felt like I was drowning. Everyone saw a younger sister whose world had just collapsed, a helper being thrown away after 8 years of service, a victim who did not see it coming. But here is the thing, what my older sister did not know, what nobody knew, was that I had found something 4 years ago. Something buried in her own financial records. Something she thought was hidden forever. And I had been quietly, patiently preparing ever since. Before we go further, if you are still with me, hit that like button and tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one. Thank you. Back to the disaster. Within a week of her announcement, my older sister had completely taken control. The shared office became her permanent space in what used to be our joint workspace. My files shrank from full cabinets to 2 small boxes she graciously allowed me to keep. The message was clear. This is not your business anymore. Within 2 weeks, she started bringing her friend Grace Lewis around. Grace was 28 and worked as a social media influencer for local events. Of course she did. She had that polished look, perfect highlights, perfect nails, outfits that cost more than my monthly groceries. She walked into the catering kitchen like she owned it, wore my old apron while taste testing recipes in my blender. She was younger than my marriage, younger than my favorite set of measuring cups, but she made amazing appetizers, so I guess that is something. My older sister paraded her around like a trophy. They would sit in the office space, watch the security feeds, eat off the plates I had bought. She would put her arm around Grace right in front of me like I was furniture, like I had already disappeared. The humiliation escalated daily. First, she cancelled my access to the business credit card. We need to separate finances, she said like she was being reasonable. Then the joint vendor accounts. Then she suggested I should probably find somewhere else to help while we sorted things out. My own contributions to the business. And I was being asked to step back. My mother came over to help me pack my things from the kitchen, and by help, I mean she went through my belongings and decided what I deserved to keep. Old linens, fine, family recipe cards, some of them, my grandmother's old binder of contacts. She hesitated on that one, like she was considering claiming it for herself. What I was not allowed to take. Any equipment my older sister had bought over the years. Any client lists I had built. Anything of value. Those were business assets, my mother explained. And my older sister was entitled to them. She packed my things in trash bags. Not boxes, trash bags. Like I was trash being taken out. Through all of this, I had one person I thought I could trust. My coworker, Julia Ramirez. We had been friends since I started at the accounting firm 10 years ago. She was the first person I called after my older sister's announcement. She was so supportive, always checking in, always asking how I was holding up, always ready to listen. She would come over with takeout and let me vent on her shoulder. She told me I deserved better. She told me my older sister was making a huge mistake, but something felt off. Little things. At first, my older sister seemed to know my plans before I made them. When I mentioned to Julia that I was thinking about fighting for my share of the client list, Mason came home the next day saying my older sister told him it would not work. When I told Julia I was looking at new vendor contracts in a specific neighborhood, my older sister made a comment about that exact area being too expensive for me. Then it clicked. Looking back, I should have seen it years ago. The way Julia always lit up when my older sister walked into the office, the way she complimented her, just a little too much, laughed at her jokes, just a little too hard. She always asked about her first whenever we talked. How is my older sister? How is the business? Is my older sister happy? She had been carrying a torch for my older sister's success for years. And my older sister, because she collected admirers like some people collect stamps, knew exactly how to use it. She made her feel special, important, not like other women. She probably implied they would team up after they split. Gave her just enough hope to keep her loyal. My coworker was her spy. 10 years of friendship sold out for some flirting and empty promises. At least charge more, Julia. But the worst part was not my older sister, was not my mother, was not even Julia. The worst part was Mason. My son saw everything. The influencer friend, the mother packing my boxes the way his aunt looked at me like I was nothing. And my older sister was working on him, dripping poison in his ear day after day. Your mom is making this difficult. I just want the business to thrive. She's the one dragging this out. I am trying to be fair, but she will not cooperate. Mason started pulling away from me. Not angry exactly, just distant, confused. He did not know who to believe. And his aunt was very, very convincing. I could lose the business. I could lose the clients. I could lose everything I had spent 8 years building. But watching my son look at me like I was the problem, that was the knife. That was the wound that actually bled. I hired my own lawyer, Stephanie Harris, recommended by my old firm. She was 52 sharp as a razor, absolutely no tolerance for nonsense. She reviewed my situation and laid out the battle plan. You helped build this business, she said. You are entitled to half of everything. We fight. I looked at her for a long moment. What if I do not want to fight? She stared at me like I had started speaking another language, like I had suggested we send my older sister a thank you card and a fruit basket. She thought I was broken, depressed, too beaten down to stand up for myself. She had no idea. I moved into a small duplex with Mason, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen the size of my old pantry. Half our boxes did not even fit. They sat stacked in the corner of his room like a monument to how far we had fallen. Meanwhile, my older sister posted photos with Grace. New chapter, new energy. Blessed, she wrote. My mother commented underneath, so happy for you, sweetheart. You deserve joy. My father called furious. You need a shark lawyer. Take her for everything she is worth. Everyone had advice. Everyone thought they knew what I should do. Everyone saw a younger sister who had given up, who could not fight, who was letting her older sister walk all over her. Everyone was wrong. Here is the thing about being underestimated. People stop watching you. They stop being careful around you. They stop guarding their secrets. And that is exactly when you learn everything you need to know. 4 years. That is how long I had been carrying this secret. That is how long I had known the truth about my older sister and her glittering, glamorous, completely fake catering empire. It started on a random Tuesday night 4 years before her demand. She was out late again for a client dinner. I was going through the business books, reconciling accounts, doing the unglamorous work that kept her operation running. And I found something strange. A transfer to an account I did not recognize, then another. Then a pattern, money flowing out of our accounts into places I had never seen before. I dug deeper. I stayed up until 3 a.m. following the trail. What I found made my blood run cold. My older sister had been taking loans against everything we owned. The catering kitchen and warehouse that everyone admired had 3 mortgages on it. The original loan of $350,000. A second mortgage of $300,000 taken out 3 years ago. A third mortgage of another $250,000 taken out 1 year ago. Total owed $1,600,000. Actual value of the property, $1,100,000. We were underwater by $500,000 on a space I thought we owned outright. The business was even worse. Lines of credit maxed out at $180,000. Back taxes owed of $75,000. Vendor debts of $110,000. Equipment loans of $65,000. The business my older sister bragged about at every event. The business that was supposedly thriving. It was drowning in nearly $430,000 of debt. Even the delivery vans were not real. All 3 were leased with balloon payments coming due. We did not own anything. We just had very expensive monthly obligation. I sat in my kitchen at 3 a.m. surrounded by printouts and did the math. Total debt approximately $2 million. Total actual asset value, maybe $1,600,000. We were $400,000 in the hole, maybe more. But where had all the money gone? I kept digging. Over the following weeks, I traced every transaction I could find, and the picture that emerged was devastating. Social media ad campaigns, $150,000, all lost. Lavish client entertainment, $70,000, gone. A vacation rental I did not know about, rented for a friend I did not know about, $60,000 in rent and furnishings. Lifestyle expenses that never made it to the business. Designer clothes trips. I was never invited on another $80,000. My older sister was not building an empire. She was building a house of cards with borrowed cards that were also on fire. We looked successful the same way a mannequin looks alive. Convincing from a distance, completely hollow up close. My first instinct was to confront her, to scream, to cry, to demand answers. But I knew my older sister. I had watched her operate for years. If I confronted her, she would manipulate me. She would explain it away, make me feel crazy for questioning her. She would probably find a way to blame me for it. And worse, if I knew she might try to take control of my separate money too. See, I had always kept a little something of my own. My grandmother's voice in my head. A woman should have her own money. My retirement account from my accounting firm years. I had rolled it over when I cut my hours but never touched it. By then it had grown to about $160,000. That was mine, earned from my job. Separate property under the law. And then there was my uncle Marcos Hale, a retired accountant who had always looked out for me. He helped me create an irrevocable trust for Mason. My retirement account and my small inheritance went into that trust. My name was not on it as a beneficiary. My older sister's name certainly was not. It was for my son's future. College, a first car, emergencies, and it was untouchable. Then I documented everything, every mortgage document, every hidden account, every suspicious transaction. I printed copies and kept them at Julia's house. I put copies in a safe deposit box. I saved everything on an encrypted drive. And then I waited. I knew my older sister would eventually push me out. Sisters like her always do. They get bored, or they find someone more useful, or they decide they deserve more. I just had to be ready when it happened. 4 years of waiting. 4 years of watching her dig the hole deeper. 4 years of smiling at family events while knowing our entire business was built on quicksand. I got very good at patience and very good at pretending I did not know my older sister was financially drowning us both. When my older sister finally demanded the split, when she demanded the business, the clients, the property, everything, I almost laughed out loud. She was not asking for assets. She was demanding debt. She just did not know it yet. Back in the present, I sat across from Stephanie Harris and placed 3 binders on her desk. 4 years of evidence, every mortgage document, every loan statement, every hidden account. She read in silence for almost an hour. When she finally looked up, her expression had completely transformed. You have known about this for 4 years. I was waiting for her to push me out. I knew she would eventually. And when she demanded everything, she demanded all the debt. She just does not understand that yet. Stephanie leaned back in her chair. The pity was gone from her eyes. The concern was gone. What replaced it was something like awe. So when you sign over the assets, you walk away clean. She gets the mortgages, the business debts, the lease obligations. All of it becomes her sole responsibility. And your retirement account, your inheritance, separate property, never commingled, legally protected, sitting safely in a trust for my son. Stephanie was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. Emma, she said, I believe I owe you an apology. I thought you had given up. I smiled back. Everyone thinks that. That is kind of the point. She went from looking at me like a lost kitten to looking at me like a chess grandmaster. I prefer grandmaster. Better outfit. The trap was already built. The numbers were verified. The documentation was airtight. All I had to do now was let my older sister think she was winning. And nobody does gracious loser better than a woman who has been practicing for 8 years. The next 3 months were a masterclass in acting. I became exactly what everyone expected me to be. Broken, defeated, barely holding on. I showed up to mediation sessions with red eyes and trembling hands. I spoke softly, hesitantly, like a woman who had lost all her confidence. I asked for so little that even the mediator seemed uncomfortable. I just want enough to start over, I said during our second mediation. I am not trying to be difficult. I know the business is her life's work. I know the property means everything to her. I do not want to tear our family apart more than it already is. I requested a settlement of $75,000, cash, my personal belongings, shared custody of Mason. That was it. My older sister agreed immediately. She was probably expecting me to fight for half of everything. That is what any reasonable lawyer would demand. Instead, I was asking for crumbs. She looked at me across that mediation table with something almost like pity, like I was a wounded animal she was graciously putting out of its misery. I deserved an Oscar for that performance, or at least a Golden Globe. I was given the role of a lifetime, and my only audience was my controlling, soon-to-be business-free older sister. With each passing week, my older sister's arrogance grew. She stopped being careful, stopped pretending to be the reasonable one. She started telling everyone who would listen that I had not even fought. She just gave up. She told her golf buddies at the country club. I offered her a fair settlement, and she took it without a word. My mother was even worse. She bragged at her book club, at her church group, at every social gathering she attended. My older sister is keeping everything. That girl did not get a dime. I always knew she was not strong enough for this family. To celebrate her upcoming victory, my older sister bought herself a new set of commercial ovens, $7,500. I know, because I saw the charge on the business account. She was still using company money for personal expenses, still digging that hole deeper. She wore the new equipment photos to our next mediation session, making sure I noticed. She also took Grace to dinner at the fancy new fusion restaurant where we had celebrated our first big client win. She posted photos on social media. Life is good when you are with the right partner, she wrote. The right partner. She meant the person who did not know about her debt yet. Meanwhile, Grace had started redecorating the catering kitchen, new signage on the walls, new lighting fixtures. She even painted my old office space gray. She painted it gray. I spent 3 weeks choosing that soft sage green, 3 weeks of paint samples and lighting tests and driving myself crazy trying to get the perfect shade. And she painted over it with builder grade gray. Like it was nothing. Gray like her personality, like her future with my older sister once she found out she was broke. Very fitting, actually. Julia kept texting, fishing for information under the guise of friendship. I played along perfectly. How are you holding up? She would ask, her voice dripping with fake concern. I just want it to be over. I would tell her, making my voice crack slightly. I cannot fight anymore. I do not have the energy. Within hours, my older sister would know. I could practically see her relaxing, letting her guard down even further. Julia thought she was playing me. She was actually just being a messenger service. Not a very expensive one either. But while the adults were playing their games, Mason was watching. And my son, my smart, observant, wonderful son, was starting to notice things that did not add up. He noticed his aunt's new commercial ovens, but heard my older sister tell him they could not afford his soccer camp. He noticed Grace's shopping bags piling up in the foyer, but heard my older sister complain about money being tight. He noticed the disconnect between the lifestyle his aunt was projecting and the excuses she kept making. One evening, Mason came to my small duplex and sat down at my second-hand kitchen table. He looked at me with those serious eyes, so much like his father's, but with something Stephen had lost long ago. Honesty. Mom, he said quietly, is my older sister actually successful? I looked at my son for a long moment. What do you think? He was quiet, processing. I think something is not right. I think she is pretending. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Trust me, just wait a little longer. My 14-year-old figured out something was wrong before 2 lawyers and a certified accountant did. I should bill his college fund for consulting fees. Behind the scenes, Stephanie was preparing our legal strategy with surgical precision. The main agreement stated clearly that I was relinquishing all claims to the business property, the catering kitchen, the client list, the equipment, everything would go to my older sister. In exchange, I would receive my modest cash settlement and walk away. But attached to that agreement was an addendum, a detailed liability disclosure statement. Every debt, every mortgage, every loan, every obligation tied to those assets. When my older sister signed for all assets, she would be legally assuming all liabilities. The mortgages would become her sole responsibility. The business debts would transfer entirely to her. The lease obligations on the vans would be her problem alone. It was all there in black and white. Legal, proper, devastating. Legal documents are like poetry, Stephanie told me. Boring, expensive poetry that can ruin someone's life. My favorite kind. 2 weeks before the final meeting, my older sister's lawyer called Stephanie with concerns. My client is assuming significant assets, she said carefully. I would like to request a full financial audit before we finalize, just to verify everything. Stephanie kept her voice neutral. Of course, we will provide whatever documentation you need. But when that lawyer brought this to my older sister, my soon-to-be business-free older sister, shut it down immediately. No audits, my older sister told her. I built that company. I know exactly what it is worth. I am not paying for some accountant to tell me what I already know. The lawyer pushed back. I strongly recommend we verify the asset values before you sign. This is a significant. My older sister cut her off. Grace wants this done. I want this done. No more delays. The lawyer had been practicing for over 30 years. She knew when a client was about to make a mistake. She also knew she could not force someone to take her advice. She presented my older sister with a waiver, a document acknowledging that she had recommended an independent financial review and that my older sister was declining against counsel's advice. My older sister signed it without reading it, just like she would sign everything else without reading it. Never underestimate the power of an impatient influencer to make a woman skip the fine print. Grace was worth millions to me in legal strategy. Anyway, the night before the meeting, my older sister sent me a text message. Thank you for not making this ugly. I stared at that message for a long time. 8 years of building her business, raising her nephew, managing her life. And she was thanking me for not making things difficult for her while she threw me away. I typed back, I just want what is best for Mason. What was best for Mason? His trust fund, his future secured, and an aunt who was about to learn the most expensive lesson of her life. Stephanie called me that evening. Thursday at 9 a.m. final meeting. The mediator is ready. Are you ready? I looked around my small duplex, the second-hand furniture, the boxes still unpacked in the corner, the tiny kitchen I had painted sage green because it reminded me of hope. I have been ready for 4 years. 4 years of waiting, and it was finally here. I felt like a kid on Christmas morning, if Christmas morning involved family mediation and quiet boundaries. Thursday morning, 9 a.m. My older sister would walk into that conference room expecting to collect her prize. She had no idea she was about to inherit a financial avalanche once she had signed for herself. And the best part, she had asked for it in writing with witnesses. If you have made it this far, you already know something satisfying is coming. Hit that like button if you are ready for my older sister to get what she asked for. And if you have not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? I have more stories where this came from, trust me. Now let us finish this. A few days after that call, my real estate agent, Alexander Clark, reached out again, his voice even more hesitant than before. Emma, the motion your older sister filed is gaining traction, he said. Her lawyer is arguing the trust fund for Mason was funded with business money during the years you helped run it. It is a stretch, but if they push, it could freeze the account for months, maybe longer, while the court sorts it out. I felt my stomach drop. The one safe thing I had built for my son, the one piece I had protected for 4 years, was now hanging by a thread because my older sister refused to accept what she had signed for herself. I thanked Alexander, hung up, and immediately called Stephanie. She listened without interrupting, then sighed. We can fight it, she said. The documentation is airtight. The trust is irrevocable and separate property. But fighting means more hearings, more depositions, more time in court with your family watching every move. It could drag on for 6 months or more. I sat there in silence, staring at the sage green wall. I had painted myself the one color that had felt like hope. Then I made the choice that would seal everything. I do not want to fight, I told her. Drop the defense. Let the motion sit there unanswered. I will not drag Mason through another round of this. Stephanie was quiet for a long moment. Emma, this could mean the trust stays tied up in paperwork. It could delay his college fund access. I know I said my voice steady even though my hands were not. Some battles cost more than they are worth. I am choosing peace, even if it is lonely peace. She did not argue after that. She simply filed the notice that we would not contest the motion, and the court date was set for 3 weeks later. That was the moment the real isolation began to close in around me like a door shutting for good. A few days after that call, my mother called. Her voice was cold, the kind of cold that comes from choosing sides once and for all. "The family is meeting at your father's house this weekend," she said. "We need to discuss how to support your older sister through this mess you created. Do not bother coming. Your presence would only make things harder for everyone." I stood in my tiny kitchen, listening to the words land like stones. I wanted to ask why, after everything, why she still saw me as the problem, but I did not. I simply said, okay, and hung up. That weekend, I sat alone in the duplex while my son Mason went to the family gathering because he said he had to see his grandparents. He came home late that night, quieter than usual. He would not look me in the eye when I asked how it went. "They talked about my older sister a lot," he finally said. "They said, you should have helped her more. They said you always made things difficult." I nodded and told him it was okay to feel confused. Inside, I felt the crack widen. My own son was starting to see the family narrative, the one where I was the younger sister who had betrayed everyone by protecting herself. He spent more nights at friends' houses after that, more excuses about school projects, more distance that I could not bridge without pulling him back into the fight I had chosen to walk away from. A week after the family meeting, my older sister tried one last time. She showed up at the duplex unannounced, her eyes red from lack of sleep. She stood on my doorstep with Grace hovering behind her like a shadow. "You have to fix this," my older sister said, her voice low and sharp. "The bank is foreclosing on the kitchen next month. The clients are all gone. You owe me that much after everything I did for you." Grace nodded beside her arms crossed. "Yeah, Emma," she added, "it is not fair what you did. You knew the whole time and you just let her take the fall." I looked at both of them, the woman I had supported for 8 years and the friend who had helped turn the knife. I felt the old anger rise, but I swallowed it. "I do not owe you anything," I said quietly. "You asked for everything except Mason. I gave you exactly what you asked for." My older sister's face twisted. "You are really going to let your own family drown while you sit here in this little box playing the victim?" I closed the door without another word. Through the peephole, I watched them walk away, my older sister, muttering something to Grace that I could not hear. That was the last time I saw her. No more texts, no more calls, just silence. The court date for the motion came and went. I did not go. Stephanie handled it alone and sent me a short email afterward. The judge left the trust untouched for now, but flagged it for review in 6 months. It was not a win. It was not even close. It was simply more waiting, more uncertainty, more proof that boundaries had a price. Mason turned 15 a month later. He asked if he could spend the summer with his grandparents so he could help my older sister sort through the mess. I said yes because I refused to make him choose sides the way everyone else had forced me to. He packed a bag, hugged me quickly, and left. The duplex felt emptier than ever. I enrolled in the online business courses I had dreamed about, but the classes were just me and a screen. No study partners, no one cheering me on. My coworker Julia never came back to the accounting firm after the rumors spread. She took a job across town, and the break room whispers followed me for weeks until I finally quit and found a smaller bookkeeping gig working from home. Alexander Clark called one last time to say the duplex lease was up in 2 months and he had found a studio even tinier than this one. I signed the papers without seeing it in person. What was the point? Some nights, I sit in the new studio, the one with the same sage green paint I brought with me, and look at my grandmother's old binder on the shelf. The apartment is quiet. No family dinners. No calls checking in. No son running through the door with stories from school. My older sister's business filed for bankruptcy 3 months after the meeting. My mother posted on social media about supporting family through hard times, but the post did not mention my name. My father sent one text asking if I had changed my mind about helping. I did not reply. My ex-husband Steven heard the story through old friends and sent a single message saying he was sorry things turned out this way. I deleted it. The trust fund for Mason remains safe, but locked in paperwork for now. He calls me every Sunday, but the conversations are short and careful, like he is afraid of saying the wrong thing. I tell him I love him and that I am proud of him, and then I hang up and sit in the silence again. This is what choosing myself looks like. Not the triumphant fresh start I once imagined, just a small studio, a part-time job from my laptop, and the slow, steady ache of knowing I am free, but no one is left to share it with. I set the boundaries because I had to. I walked away because staying would have cost me the last piece of myself I had left. But freedom in this family came with a price tag I never saw on the fine print. It came with loneliness that settles in the quiet moments when the screen goes dark and the phone stays silent. I still paint the walls sage green when I move. I still keep my own money separate. I still believe my grandmother was right. But some nights I wonder if knowing your worth is worth the empty room it leaves behind. I guess that is the lesson I am still learning, one quiet day at a time. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever set a boundary that cost you the people you thought would always be there, drop a comment below and tell me what happened next. I read every single one, and it helps knowing I am not the only one sitting in the quiet.